Okay, it's 1 o'clock. We'll call the March 14th Finance Committee meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is the 2022-2023 budget. As I had mentioned at the last finance meeting, we were in the process of building department budgets. Those are complete. And we had moved on to the buildings, each individual building budget. Those are due the 18th. So on Friday of this week, and then we'll plan to talk about that at the board meeting on the 28th, just kind of talk about the process in itself. So that's kind of where we're at with it. As far as the departments are concerned, everything was seamless. We did have a couple of small questions that we had to send back to academic services and in regards to professional development or something, but other than that, it went really good, and thanks to Katie, she does a lot of the work along the way, so I appreciate her efforts. Does anybody have any questions in regards to the budget update? Okay, levy discussion is the second thing on the agenda. Just kind of wanted to bring this up again. Obviously, the ultimate, what will have to happen is the Board of Education will have to make a decision on whether they want to run a levy and when. As I had mentioned at the last finance meeting, I thought it was advantageous or proactive for us as a school district to stay ahead of the game. Whether we run something in August of this year, or November of this year, or April of next year, I think the conversations need to start. The first thing that we'll need to discuss is, right now we have a 5-year sunset on our levy. One thing that I wanted to pass along to the committee today, I know there was a lot of discussion regarding sunset versus no sunset. You know, as I reflected on what was discussed at the last finance meeting, you never want to put something on a ballot to make it fail, right? And there are people in the community that just say right off the bat, if you don't have a sunset, it will fail. And I believe them. So I'm not providing a recommendation or anything today, but I do think it's probably in our best interest to look at the levy with the sunset. And that sunset maybe could be a little bit longer than what it is right now. Right now we have a 5-year sunset. Maybe we could look at a 6-year sunset or a 7-year sunset. And all that's going to do is just going to put more comfort on the administration that have to deal with that. So they'll have 5 years to start looking at it rather than 3. And so this will be an agenda item for the Board of Education on the 28th at their March meeting. So I don't know, they still have a couple of months to make that decision. If they do want to run something in August of 2022, it does have to be decided on before the May meeting, or at the May board meeting. The Wednesday after the May meeting is the last date to put anything on the ballot for August. So I would open it up to any questions that you guys might have. I know that's we had kind of thrown that out there, so I just kind of wanted to provide my 2 cents. Not that it's worth anything, but that's kind of what I was thinking.
I still think we need to push it for fall of this year, then we kind of get a temperature of the public and what they're thinking.
Okay, so that would be August. And, so I think that's what we can do if everybody around the table feels okay with that, then that would be the recommendation that I would provide to the Board of Education on the 28th. Just say in the finance meeting we discussed this and we felt like it was better to be proactive than reactive with the levy.
I'd agree with that.
Okay? Yes, Mr. Reader.
No, I concur with that observation totally, and we'll be glad to help you guys support and run that. I think in addition to adding the years, as previously been mentioned, I think with that sunset in it, we could go ahead and go up 25 cents, possibly to 85 cents.
Okay.
So that's, to me, a huge compromise that we get the increase, and plus then we put say we add 1 year to it, 6 years, this puts the subject or the conversation to rest until 2030.
Uh-huh.
So,
And I think it probably, what I'm going to do is talk to Dr. Van Zyl and talk to the Board of Education members, but I think it's probably best if they start the discussions on the 28th and then assign a committee of 2 or 3 people to sit down and kind of discuss those options and bring a recommendation back to the board in April. I think that's probably going to be our easiest way to come about something viable. Yes?
Can you go over again where this money is going exactly?
Well, the 61 cents in itself is all operational, and right now, as of today, the 61 cents that you ran, that the school district ran in April of 2019 is all tied up in salaries.
Okay.
And so eventually, that's what it's all going to go to. It's strictly operational. And I had mentioned at the last meeting, I provided you guys with a document as to everything that we said we would do, and it had the security, and it had the SROs, and it had the building entrances, and we checked off everything.
Mhm.
But then we also stated that everything would be tied into salaries. And one of the reasons why all of those dollars are tied into salaries right now is because of the raises that we have given the last couple of years. In the document itself, it only had one raise in 2019-20, but we have given those raises in 2021, 21-22, and plan to do that again as well in 22-23. So all of that specific amount of money, the 61 cents, whatever that 61 cents generates, is all tied up in salaries right now.
And if there is not like a new levy or like a renewal of a levy,
Uh-huh.
how will that affect our budget?
But what'll happen is you'll have to make about $8 million worth of cuts in order for that to be sustainable moving forward. And that would in turn more than likely freeze those salaries that you plan on making some adjustments to in a positive way. And I think everybody's heard me say this, that in education, unfortunately, your dollars are saved by people. And so what's going to happen is you have less teachers, you have larger class sizes, right? I mean, so you're going to have to, and that's one thing we've been working on very hard the last couple of years, is to get those class sizes down to make them a little more manageable. And you know, I think the staff would tell you that we're doing everything we can to get to that point, and I would hate for the levy not to pass and be back in that situation again. And one thing, I say April 2024, that's when it has to pass, but if it didn't pass before April 2024, then you would have to make those cuts because you couldn't plan on having it happen. So in that 23-24 school year, those cuts would have to be made.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, I guess I look forward to the committee, because I'd like to hear more conversation around why we need a sunset. A permanent pay increase doesn't need a temporary levy. So, I'd like to hear, I guess, more details on why we don't think it's gonna pass. If we ran the bond or levy with no sunset.
Well, I think a lot of it just has to do with trust. That's why it was put on there before, and I don't think people are ready for that yet. And I say that, and this is Gabe speaking, right? Because obviously I've done a 360 on you, David, because I agree with you 100%. You don't want to manage anything with the sunset, but as I have conversations with people in the public, their perception is a little bit different than what ours is inside of the walls of the school district, of how things are going. We know they're going good, we know there's a lot of good things that happen, but the perception from the outside is still different, unfortunately.
Quick question.
Yep.
What's it cost to run levy? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that expensive.
I think it's about $40,000.
A little more.
A little more than that? Okay.
What'd you say?
Katie, do you know?
I think it was 60 the last time we were on it.
It keeps going up, like everything else.
So it was $40,000 in April of 2019.
That varies depending on if you're the only thing on the ballot or not.
Right.
If you have to carry the full load. Otherwise, it is divided up somewhat, but it's still
Still quite good.
quite a little bit of.
And that could have been the reasoning why it was only 40 at that time, because
Yeah.
there was a couple of things on the ballot. at that time.
How do we pay for,
You just pay
Things like
for it
those.
out of your, pay for it
It's
out of the ballot.
budgeted.
just?
Yeah. Yeah. We have a budgeted amount for it every year because obviously you have board members, you know, you have an election in April of every year. Any other questions?
Well, I mean, we had good discussion about this at the last meeting,
Uh-huh.
and I felt heard on that. I would prefer that we didn't have a sunset. But I did feel heard on that, and if we're coming to the conclusion, I mean, I want to be a person that supports what's best for our community and district, and if maintaining the sunset is not the penalty that I perceive it to be, obviously I'm gonna be supportive.
Yeah,
I think with the new board members coming in and changes that could happen in the next 6 years, I think that would establish trust that maybe the next round you can make it permanent. I agree, it needs to be. I 100% agree with you, I just don't think this is the season for that.
If you do it that way, adding the years and the amount, then you could start running it again in 2028 and run it that time, which is what, only a few years out, as you said, 6 years out, run it without it then. Or another possibility then, you could probably add 10 years to it, so you could make it 10 years probably. But at that point, we should have proved ourselves enough to get it passed without it.
and I don't think it's really not anybody's fault sitting around this table.
Correct.
That's definitely not
No.
the issue, but the things happened, right? And we can't go back and change any of that stuff, so for whatever reason, it's still lingering.
I'm pretty biased and passionate about this one, so it's probably best that I listen more than talk.
I think we're in agreement with you, I just think it's hard to pass that to the public. I think the public's not in agreement, I think we're probably in agreement more. Kenny might not be, just yet.
No, I'm for the public, I'm for the taxpayers, I'm for accountability from this group right here. And the best way to keep any type of minimal accountability is have a sunset. And we're acting like it's the end of the world about this thing. It's less than 5% of our total yearly budget. So all this hullabaloo about less than 5% of our yearly budget right now. So, and all we want to do is come up with ways to smoke and mirrors, pass it through the taxpayers and the voters. And that's what you'd be doing if you take the sunset off.
Well, it's not us that's gonna pay for it. It's not money out of my pocket. Teachers are gonna be hurt by it. Because that's who we're gonna have to cut. We're
So
gonna
you-
have to cut staff members.
Your fear is it doesn't pass, but I think what the argument was last time from Kenny was that if there's no sunset, it likely wouldn't pass, which would then be the effect, is because we're not putting the sunset. I agree it should be permanent, but I also understand the public perception.
And that's exactly, David, to your point, that's exactly why I would reluctantly support a sunset, is because I don't want it to affect the staff in a negative way. And it's going to if it doesn't pass, obviously. And I think it's just more of a, I don't know.
I don't think we need the negative perception of a failed levy.
Right.
No, that's exactly what you do. You get another black eye over trying to, and with the conversation came up in the paper last time about how, that's one of the things I think that was critical of Doug, at least from my constituents, was he said, well, we've got 8 bites at the apple. Well, that's exactly what we've always done in the past, run it and run it and run it. And then finally, on at least 3 occasions over the last 10 years, they ran back and ran it the second time with the sunset, and it passed every time. And, people went to prison less than 6 years ago. That has not been forgotten. If you had a 2nd grader then, now that person is just an 8th grader or something. So we inherited a big treasure trove of skeletons. But the way to get by that is say we're going to trust the public to pass it and re-look at it again 8 years and really 10 years from now. So
I know, but on the other hand, the public has to trust us to do what they elected us to do. But, just, I think, as you mentioned, going to the board, getting a committee, ironing out the little details and everything, I think will be a good thing. Because, the amount has to be increased in order to be able to do any extra good.
Above and beyond,
And then
sure.
about the years, also need to be increased as well too, so.
And 100% of that money should go to teachers and staff. And that's correct, right?
Yeah,
So,
Gabe,
and
what?
I don't think
oh,
anybody's
sorry.
able to argue about that part.
I was wondering, the extra part there that kicks in 2024, going to 85 cents, for instance, how much more money would that be to our?
Well, you figure it's about 120, no, I'm sorry. Yes. It'd be a couple $1 million.
Okay.
I want to say it's $120,000 per penny, Kenny,
Okay.
but I can get that exactly.
No, that sounds about right. I wonder, you know, if we,
Yeah.
what we have now,
Yeah.
and what it breaks down to, what, about $6 million a year?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I think it was 6.588 the last time.
So we could probably comfortably look at 8.5 to $9 million when we're talking,
Sure.
you know, just 2 years down the road.
Mhm.
Just 2 years down the road, you could figure that out.
I'll go with the majority on this one, but I'd like to just, for the sake of argument, at least throw out there that we have a good track record these last couple of years. We have proof of that. We have a new board and we have new administration. At some point, I think we owe it to ourselves to go in a new direction. So,
I might make one more comment.
Yeah.
Probably not for the good of the cause,
Come on.
but intended to be, certainly intended to be. I think that one of the things that helps develop trust in the community is if the board can be united on this. And, you know, we're an extension of the board in this committee because you guys allow us to have input. And so, you know, I think that what we want to be able to do is go with a complete voice. I think it'll be a big positive to the community if the board can unanimously say, hey, well, this is what we're going to be able to support. And I think that'll mean a lot. And those are the kind of things we need to be able to start happening to change our district and to change the perception. And so, you know, I appreciate what Kenny said. Like I said last meeting, I spoke out and he did too, and I respect that. And I'm willing to say, hey, let's go with a plan that we can all support. And I think the value of that is pretty significant.
Yep, and that's why I think it's probably important just to raise the discussion at the board meeting and not put anybody on the spot. I think it's important to go the committee route, let them hash that out amongst themselves, and then bring a recommendation back. Because once that recommendation comes back, that was the importance of that to me, was that that's united. You know, once that recommendation comes from LaTanya or David or Kenny or whoever it is, then it's united.
Yeah.
No matter whether they agreed with it or not.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's united. I think that's why it's important to go that route.
Well, and I don't, I mean, not being on the back on this, but since I recommended it last time, and a large portion of my constituents, as you probably could believe, Tom, are really mad at me for offering to add a year, and if the ones that aren't mad at me for adding a year are mad at me because I offered to raise it. Even with the sunset. They're gonna vote for it, they're
Everybody's
gonna
mad.
vote for it, yeah.
Well, I thought you and I agreed on 2 years. I thought it was 7, not 6. You don't remember that?
No, that was true, except for you started out at 91 cents. And I put it back down to 81,
All right,
okay? So
okay.
you forgot that part of the negotiation.
All right, well, thank you guys, I appreciate
Yeah,
that, and
good discussion.
just know that the discussions will start happening on the 28th. Okay, the third thing is turf football field at Central. We had mentioned this last time, and I kind of asked you whether it would be advantageous for us to look at numbers, and so thanks to Dave Lau, the athletic director at Central, he had reached out to 3 companies. One of them is here with us today, Midwest, and what we need to do as a finance committee today is just kind of give the blessing to move forward to look at possibly renovating noise. And one thing that I want to make note of is that all of you know that Central plays in the Suburban Conference in Kansas City, and if you go to away events, our facilities are not very good in comparison to everybody else's. And I do think this is something you'll notice here in just a minute. I'll be presenting some numbers on fund balances. I think this is something that is probably possible within the budget in itself, where you don't have to, we can just take it out of the fund balances and make this important upgrade to our facility. The argument's gonna be, why are you doing it at Central, and why you're not doing it at Benton, why you're not doing it at Lafayette? We have to start somewhere. And so, all we're gonna do today is just say, let's move this thing forward. We take it to the board. The board says, let's move it forward, and then between March and April, we will go through the RFP process or whatever our legal tells us that we have to do. And then I'm sure those three companies that have responded to us will be the ones that will respond, and maybe others as well. And then we bring that back to the board in April for a decision. Either you do it or you don't. I don't know that there's a lot of talking about this whole situation. I'm comfortable that we're in a place financially that we can do this. It was something I brought up 3 years ago, put it on hold because of the talks of closing buildings and building one school and those types of things, and I think those talks are gone for now. And that complex is always going to be right in the center of the town. It's always going to be something that's going to be there. And so, with that being said, I guess I would open it up to any comments that you guys might have. Is anybody against this? And we're not approving anything, and the board won't be approving anything in March either. They'll just be sending it out to bid, and if it comes back the dollars come back crazy, then they can always not agree to do it at the April meeting. Just so you know, we're looking at right around $1 million. There's a lot of deducts, a lot of adds, additions, those types of things that each one of the companies have provided, but that's probably what it's going to be, is right around $1 million, and that would be a turf football field. And if you guys want to speak to what you guys bid, that could help me a little bit on.
Yeah, so we met with.
Do you use the podium or anything?
No, I don't think so. You can just stand if you want.
So we met with David Lau last week of February, walked the facility with him. The initial conversation was basically just converting the natural grass football field to synthetic. We gave a couple of different options as far as like colors, whether that goes to a green field or potentially a gray field.
Do you have something we can pass around and look at?
Yeah, I don't know
Do you want to approach?
if anybody's seen these, but just two different color options. So as we walked the site, we started asking a few questions. We brought our architect, VSR Design, with us. Things that came up on the walkthrough was, because it's an old natural grass field, you've got the long jump and triple jump events on the east side. It would be demoing those out potentially and building them up in the northeast corner, outside the track. One of the things that comes into play if you choose to do that is that ginormous tree has to come out that covers half the track.
$7,000 tree. Come on.
There you go. That's a big one. So that was one of the options. We also noticed when we walked the track that lane 8 is actually too narrow on both the north and the south ends. Sounds like in conversation it's been that way for 50 plus years potentially. So we gave an option to actually extend the track on both ends to get a full width lane 8. On the south end, that's pretty easy because it's pretty flat. We'd have to demo out a perimeter fence and then retie a new fence into the dugout of the softball field there. On the north end, it's a little bit more of a challenge because of that hillside and the logo that's on the hillside. So you'd actually have to build a retaining wall 2 or 3 feet tall to hold that hillside back, but be able to extend that outside lane 8 to the north. that retaining wall extends far enough to the east that allows to put those long jump and triple jump runways up in that corner of the site too. We looked at removing the pole vault off of the south, what we call the D zone, the radius area past the end zone, moving that to the north side so that would actually go across the end of the high jump area. On the home side, or the west side where the bleachers and grandstands are, it looks like there's been water over the years. It basically runs down those bleachers and across the track, which causes some drainage issues and just long-term longevity for the track surface. So we designed basically a drain curb to go in there to try and catch that water before it runs across the track. A few of the other alternates that we went through, we noticed as we walked the track that there's a few places, especially on the south end on the radius, where the concrete and asphalt have buckled, which has popped loose the track surface on the inside of lane 1. Until you start excavating, you know, we can only speculate, but it looks like there may be some subsurface, like subgrade issues going on there with expansion and contraction. So what we did is we listed 3 different track alternates. One would just be to respray and stripe the track that's there. One would be to remove the rubber track surface and actually do a new track surface. And then the third option was to actually take out the asphalt as well, which would expose that subgrade. You would know then with a proof roll test whether it was good or bad, and whether you need to soil stabilize that track or not. So we listed all those as individual alternates so you can see what the pricing is that's associated with all of those. And then you can pick and choose what you want to do or what you don't want to do or what you can afford or any of that. So I think those were the main things that we saw on the walkthrough. And then obviously the...
Can you pass that around?
Okay.
How long will it take to complete this?
Well, part of that's going to depend on which alternates you would choose to do or not do.
From the least to the most?
The least it would probably be 6 weeks, and the most you're probably looking at 10 weeks.
That's with the drainage and the add-ons or alternates, whatever you call them. Is that an add-on? Is that what an alternate is?
Yeah, so we priced all those as adds, so you would...
Oh, okay.
So what we would do in the RFP, or however the lawyer recommends to us, we would put all that stuff in there and then they would just bid that separately. So they would
Got
bid,
it.
they would bid
Kind of
the,
a la carte.
yeah, kind of an à la carte
Yeah.
type thing. And we can pick and choose what we want to take out and not take out. I think the timeliness of it, if we want to get on in August or the end of July, then it probably does need to be approved at the April board meeting.
Absolutely. Are you guys from out of state or are you local?
Can't say.
Okay, so if we had a problem or something, you're pretty accessible.
Yeah,
Okay.
hour.
Is this like $1 million per school, or are there differences in between each school? And then is there like a timeline to complete all the schools?
Well, I think that's probably something that would need to be discussed by the board as to how they wanted to work the phase. It probably is gonna be a little cheaper at Lafayette and Benton, and I say that because the tracks aren't competition tracks. They are 6-lane tracks at both of those facilities. So it would be less expensive at those two than it is at Central.
So this track is really owned by the city from noise, it's not, that's
It is. We do have-
Central.
We have a lease, and I had Mickey bring this information to me today with the city, and I'm sure that they wouldn't have a problem with this. I figured after today, I'll go to them and ask Chuck if he has a problem with us doing this, but I can't imagine that they would. And we signed a lease in 1979 for 100 years, so we have a lease through 2078. I have a copy of it right here.
So the improvements that we do, we're gifting that,
Yeah,
it's a gift to the
To
city
the
back
city.
when they take back over.
Mhm.
But, so that's not, I know it's perceived as Central's field, but it's really not. I mean, it belongs to the city.
right, and so does the softball field as well.
And the tennis courts, and the horseshoe, do they take the horseshoe things out?
I don't.
No, they're still there.
And the other
Yeah.
schools, are they ours?
Yes,
at
they
the
are,
other schools?
yes, they are ours. Yep.
Well, the reason I mention it is because with a field that big, if other people can use it because it's a city field, how hard is it to, and I don't know if this is something we could do, we got, right now on this, on that, we've got Central's logo right in the middle. Why can't we make it look like it's a city field and put a Benton logo and a Lafayette logo, and then on the edges put St. Joe or something different, where it's perceived as a field that's used by all schools, so that we don't have the expense of trying to do the whole fair thing, do ours next, then it's perceived as a field that could be used if Central's away, or we have a big tournament or something's happening, then it's usable.
And that does make good sense, and that was something that was brought to our attention when we discussed this back in 2019, was that Central is gonna be away every other week, so Lafayette and Benton would have an opportunity to play there.
Sure.
So that's definitely an option. That's a good point.
How hard is it to modify that? Is it a big expense to add extra logos or change it from Central to St. Joseph or something?
Not at all.
No, it's a super easy process. So, what I would tell you we've done for other people that use it as a joint facility is you would maybe put like St. Joe in both end zones, so it's not school specific, and then to kind of tie in the potentially 3 schools that would use it, you could go and do like a logo on the 25, one on the 50, and one on the other 25. You could even get creative and keep it geographically the same.
Can you come look at this, right? Joe drew,
My jotting, it's not,
I know, but it's
yeah, he's got
kind
a
of
great
like,
idea.
as you were explaining, right?
Yeah, he's got the
Yeah,
vision,
so-
that's great.
So everybody can see that. So basically, if you took this, you would put one school logo on the 25 here.
The south would be Benton, that, like what you were saying, keep it
Yeah.
geographically, that'd be
You
kind of
can
fun.
keep it geographically and have Lafayette on the north, Central in the middle, Benton on the south.
What do you think of that, Kenny?
Each school gets its recognition on the field. You would change the look, the end zones, color and graphics to say like St. Joe or whatever you wanted it to say, but that can be done. That's a common thing on shared fields between multiple.
And I was just gonna say, that's one question I was gonna ask. You have built these facilities for places that have 3 high schools, I'm sure, right? Or 2 high schools?
Yeah.
That are shared facilities?
Either multiples. I mean,
Yeah.
2 to 4, you know,
Mhm.
sometimes you'll do actually 4 logos on the 25, 2 on each end. If you have 4 schools that are sharing it,
Yeah.
you can do the same thing in the end zones.
So this
I like
facility,
that, excuse me, I like that idea.
this would be a full 400-meter track, full-size soccer field, full-size football field, correct?
Correct.
Because I don't think, like at Benton,
Yeah,
it's a small soccer field.
it's a small one.
It's very narrow.
Well, it'd be 195 foot, just because we do have our borders.
Sure.
But it's 195 foot soccer field.
So the sport of
65
soccer
yards.
has a varying width.
Exactly.
On the width of the field, you can be as narrow as 160 or as wide as 225, so anything in between is fine.
But this would be the max.
Exactly.
And this is the only school we could do that.
Have a
Yeah.
good-sized field.
The asphalt underneath the track, how much of that will be replaced, or will it just be repaired, or?
It's add-on.
It's just part of the.
That's one of the many options, so.
We as a board just have to decide whether that's what we want to do. And to be honest with you, David, I think if the numbers come back to where it's justifiable, then we do a lot of things around here to save dollars, and I don't think this is something that I would want to
Yeah.
save dollars on. If we're gonna do it, we might as well do it right.
I agree.
2 quick things. It doesn't do anything for a field house, right?
No.
Okay, second thing is, since it is jointly owned or owned by the city, is there any opportunity to approach them to participate, 1? Or 2, the Bodie Trust has funded, you know, like renovation of the tennis courts and some other things like that. That we've got the parks tax now. It seems to me like it'd be a good time to consider approaching the city about their participation, particularly trying to sell them on the track idea, I think.
The track in itself, because that's really something that is used by patrons of the
Right,
city.
it is.
So that's a good point.
Be a good
And when I
compromise.
start having those conversations with Chuck and with Brian, I think that's definitely something that needs to be asked, for sure.
Yeah.
What are you saying, possible contribution from the city too?
Yeah.
You
For
know,
the track
hopefully we,
itself.
you know,
I agree with that point, because people do walk on the track.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's a public track.
I assume,
And this, one thing that this is also going to do, as you know, we are making some strides towards adding middle school football. This will free up the field behind Bodie, which is now used as a soccer field, which is kind of embarrassing. But the soccer team would go to this facility, and so that could be a middle school football practice field. And so it's actually all gonna work in conjunction with a lot of things that need to happen for facility space that we need.
what would be the access to the field? Limited like it is now? I mean, do you control access to the football field? You think about the, I guess, all of the teams that would go, hey, this is great, now there's a place that's dry, or it doesn't need to be dry, whatever the case is, place to go practice. If it's city funded, they're gonna want city access. So
That's a
just-
good point, too.
And I think that's probably a discussion that will have to happen with them as well.
I think you'd still wanna probably have overriding control
Sure.
of that, or to some
Mhm.
extent, or you'll have,
I think we would have to,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, that would be something that I would request. Yes?
Can I throw one more thing out?
Uh-huh.
So, we asked David Lau about the spoils that's coming out, all the excavation, so he asked us, because our track guy had done all those tennis courts for the city, so we actually spoke to the city about a dump site in town. And one of the things that they said in that phone call is that it will have to go to city council approval,
Mhm.
which is just a formality, but from a timing standpoint, I think you need to know that and account for that, just because it's just one more.
Well, my conversations
Okay.
are going to start with Chuck and Brian as soon as today is over. And the reason why I didn't want to go have those conversations if this wasn't something that was going to be moved forward out of the finance committee. Yeah, those conversations will start taking place.
Well, I definitely think we need a turf field. Like I said last meeting, we had some athletic directors come up from the city that refused to play on our field because it was embarrassing. So we need to have this.
As a parent of a soccer player, we didn't play anywhere else that had grass. Everywhere else has turf. And you go down there and it takes you a whole half to figure out how fast the ball moves on turf. It's a disadvantage for the kids, and that's not necessarily, but we wonder why can't we be competitive in some of these things? Well, we don't have the same balance. I mean, we're not doing the same things, we're not practicing the same places. You wanna talk about, the Den has its own mystique, but it's uphill, it's usually wet, and it is not the best showpiece as far as, hey, welcome to St. Joe. You've got neighbors in the background mowing the lawn, dogs barking, I mean, it's an interesting place to go play soccer, to say the least, so. Again, not sure that's worth, we'll love to have it, definitely, but it's $1 million.
What is the estimated maintenance cost? Is there every 3-5 years, any type of?
So maintenance on synthetic turf is, we give you machines, a groomer and a sweeper as part of the project. It takes about an hour to groom a field or sweep a field, and you do that roughly like once a month, if you're using it. Obviously, winter time, if you're not using it, you don't have to do it. And then we usually recommend an annual maintenance program, like a deep clean grooming with a little bit more aggressive machine once a year. So.
And the life is about 15?
It's warranty, all the turf is warranted for 8, the average is 10. So, I always tell people financially plan on replacing at 8 from a financial standpoint, even though you'll probably get 10 years out of it.
and typically, what's the replacement cost compared to initial installation?
Right now, about $500,000 is what it costs to remove a field and replace it with new carpet. Part of that goes into one of the options that was listed was doing a concussion shock pad. Just so it's literally think of it like a carpet pad under the field for
Nice.
head impact collisions. So like that pad's warranted for 25 years. So you can use that for 3 turf cycles at least.
Nice.
I guess you'd probably have less injuries with the turf as well. Would you say so?
You know,
There's a lot of debate about
here's
that.
how I answer that
Or not?
question.
I
Whether you have more or less injuries usually is dictated by how well you maintain your natural grass field now and what you're comparing each field to. So, most people in the Midwest at the high school level especially, don't have the most high-end natural grass fields. So they're more prone to injury than what like a high-end sand-based natural grass field is.
Yeah, and we put, one of the reasons that we put that shock pad we talk about for safety, it's not just the concussion, the head to the surface safety, but it also allows you to firm up the infill. You know, it's got rubber and sand in it. So when you firm that up, you have better footing, as you can imagine, walking on the soft sand on a beach versus down at the water. The firmer it is, the more stable your legs are. So by the end of a game, if you're on an all rubber field, you're gonna be much more tired. And so then you're prone to other injuries. Now, I can't put a number to it or statistic necessarily, but we do know that you get more high ankle sprains on like all rubber fields. It's a different kind of an injury. I don't want to get into too much of the weeds here, but that's really kind of the difference. That's why there's a couple of reasons for that shock pad, probably three. One is it extends the life typically of your turf by a year or two, and it decreases the chance of you getting that head to ground concussion. And the other is it lets you firm up your playing surface so that you have less of the lower leg type injuries.
One thing we do know from testing, third-party testing, is that when you do a shock pad under a field, GMAX is the term. It's basically the head impact test into a surface. It's the exact same test that the automotive industry uses for head impact into a dashboard. And so what we know is that you're going to go up usually in the 10 to 20 points per year range with a non-padded system, and it goes up typically 3 to 5 points with a pad. So it becomes a much more consistent, safe system.
I assume maintenance of a turf field probably decreases over a grass field because you're painting it, you're mowing it, it gets torn up on a muddy Friday night.
Yeah, we actually have we actually have staff that is assigned to that, each one of them, so that would obviously free up. We're 17 employees understaffed right now in the operations department, so it would really help us if we went to something.
And free up some of those 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing it does is it allows you, sorry to ramble on, but it allows you to use that field more often. You know, we talk about the community coming in and using it. If you can use it for gym class during the day, which typically on a natural turf field now with native soil, you want to stay off that field except for games. You know, a lot of times you don't even practice on it very often. So this would allow you, I won't say 24/7, but it allows you a lot more to use. So.
We always tell schools it's the cheapest 3 classrooms you can build.
Yep. Well, I apologize for putting you guys on the spot. Thank you for providing that information. That's good. Mr. Reader?
Yeah, I started out, I wanted to make sure I was clear on this, but I thought we were just talking about turf for Noyes Field or Central's Field. But we were also talking turf and a track.
Correct.
Now, was there going to be any, Benton and Lafayette came up, was anything going to happen at any of those, on this project we're talking about now?
Not,
Okay.
not at those facilities, no.
Nothing's going to happen, okay. So this $1 million is basically, is the new track and the new turf, right? Like these plans are.
There's add-ons on there, grab that paper and I'll show you.
It's listed on the.
Okay.
Right here.
$1 million is the number we're using though, okay. Yeah, I saw it listed as
Oh,
that.
sure.
Well, $1 million is really for the turf itself,
The turf
Okay.
and drainage.
turf and drainage under it. The other add-ons include whether we have to replace the entire track, whether we replace the asphalt. There's a whole number of things, and we don't know where your number is. I mean, we talk about $1 million. I mean, if it's 800 or 1.2, we're trying to just give you everything that might pop up during construction.
We appreciate the transparency.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we bought everything, we bought the Cadillac version, the Mercedes version here, then what could it be if we bought everything?
Gabe, do you have numbers?
I do.
Oh, good. Or
I
they might have numbers.
approximately, within a couple $1 million.
You mean the add-ons and, but some of those
Couple
add,
$100,000.
some of those add-ons that they were talking about, some of it's just resurfacing the track
About 1.7?
versus expanding versus.
Probably, that would be a good number.
About
yeah,
1.7.
Okay.
You know, if all the asphalt's bad, and we gotta stabilize everything, and
That's the worst case.
And Kenny, I have some documents that I'll be providing.
Yeah, no, I thank you very much, I appreciate the conversation on that, and this next kind of sidebar, other than, proving my age as being probably the oldest one in the room, is that, when I pole vaulted for Lafayette, the pole vault and the high jump and the triple jump were both at the north end.
okay.
So, you know, that was 50 years ago, but,
You pole vaulted?
and we, okay, that may explain a lot of things. I didn't miss the pit that many times.
He didn't have the concussion pad underneath there.
No, we just threw a big blanket out there usually, to land on, or sand. But anyhow, and you're not gonna believe this, but, we actually practiced with the steel pole. Because in the 70s, the fiberglass poles had just kind of came into being, so to speak. And the guy right before me, who still has the Lafayette record 55 years later, broke 3 of the new fiberglass poles. So they made all of us freshmen and stuff go ahead and use the steel pole until we could clear 10 or 12 feet. But in 1970, one of those poles cost $200, so it was like a mortgage payment on somebody's house. And he broke 3 of them that one year, so anyhow, and, that was
All right, well, thank you guys. Appreciate you guys' time.
One more question, please.
Dean Ward.
What was the lifespan of the
Still
track?
around.
I don't know if I heard that part.
What was the what?
Lifespan of the track.
track.
Well, I mean, if you stabilize the subgrade and keep it from moving and do new asphalt, I mean, that's gonna last for 10 to 30 years.
Yeah. Now, then the rubber track that you have is, again, I'll try not to get too detailed, but it's a base mat, which looks like asphalt, you know, you've seen it, and it's porous, and then you put structural spray over the top of it. You do that structural spray every 5 to 7 years and restripe, and so it's usually about 15 years before you, or 15 to 20 before you have to go back in and scrape the rubber off and start over.
But it's better when you're replacing it than, I mean, just the way my brain works is it would be better to probably replace all of the asphalt while you got it up.
Yeah, more than likely, and it's like any other, if you've had any consultants in talk about asphalt, if you see things cracking, it's not the track surface, it's usually not even the asphalt, it's what's underneath the asphalt that is loose and soft. And that movement that Craig talked about between the curves and the asphalt. So we try to, there's some stabilization numbers in there that you'll see, and that's what that does. It chemically alters the soil so that you don't get freeze thaw in a lot of that movement. So if you're gonna tear it up that much and spend that kind of money, we think you should go all the way and finish the asphalt.
That's the only thing that I'm saying is while we got it up,
Right.
I would hate for, you know, short term in the future, someone complaining, I thought they just put a new track in. And
Right,
Is Missouri Western have a regulation track?
no.
I didn't think
They
so.
took it out after when the Chiefs came in.
What, that could be another,
They're actually
group-
asking-
that could be another group to touch base with and say, hey, because they do have a track program now. And so, in terms of a partner, I'm not sure how they could partner, but it might be interesting.
Okay.
To be of value to our community.
Yeah, sure. Good point.
It should be mentioned to them,
Yeah,
offered up to them.
that's what.
Did you guys do a project at Missouri Western?
Well, I did the Chiefs Fields there,
Oh.
whatever that, I don't remember the year now. But,
11 years ago.
and I helped, it was 11 years ago.
Probably.
Was it
Thanks.
11?
Yeah, appreciate that. That's how much older I am than I remembered. And we took out the track because they didn't have a track program at the time. I understand they've got it back now, so they are looking for sites to build a new track. But that, it's worth asking.
You can ask that question, but
Yeah.
it's probably not gonna work because you have to remember that in collegiate, they have steeplechase.
Oh, yeah.
So you'd be looking at different events. You also have to have javelin, and you don't have any space out there for that.
It'd have to go to one of the ball fields
Hate
adjacent
to be
to
the
it.
bear of bad news, but that's just the
No, it's
reality
good.
of a
So
collegiate
they'd have to
track
take out
versus
that
high
ball.
school.
But it's worth asking, I think,
Which
and
is
it's,
possible.
and it's a, it's probably more of a scheduling thing too, to run your different track programs, because they're all in the spring.
Who uses that baseball field? If it, no, nobody crucify me, but if that baseball field, that little tiny field was taken out, I mean.
Central softball does.
Oh,
Yeah,
they-
And then
you almost need an
baseball too,
entire
doesn't it?
baseball field to throw javelin in. It's that
Okay.
long of an event,
Okay,
that long of a throw.
I could throw it to that wall, so I wasn't thinking that big.
It used to be younger kids, you know.
Huh.
Okay, well, good discussion. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like I said,
Thank
sorry to
you.
put you on the spot, but I appreciate that.
That's all right.
And we'll be in touch on the process that the board chooses, and thank you for your interest in the school
Great.
district.
Here's your brochure back.
All right, the next thing on the agenda, the 21-22 ending fund balance prediction. You can take one of these and pass them around if you want. But this is something that I told the board that I would prepare for them, and so Katie has plugged in all of the numbers. And we feel like this is somewhat accurate. You know, this is not anything that we would say that we're going to guarantee that's going to happen. It just kind of gives us some predictive estimates on where we're at and where we're headed. So bottom line is our beginning fund balance at the beginning of this year was $31,739,843, and our unrestricted fund balance is predicted to be $32,604,370, which is you know, an increase. And if you notice down at the bottom, the fund balance percentage is 26.57, which is an increase once again from the previous year. So financially, we're in pretty good shape, and that's one of the reasons why we can have this discussion in regards to the upgrades at Noyce. So I just wanted you guys to
Yeah.
understand that. And I had told the board I was going to present this to them anyway, so they know it's coming. It's not anything I was trying to link to that, but I just wanted to kind of put people at ease to better understand where we were financially and why we can even have those discussions regarding the upgrades.
Thanks
Any
for
que-
doing that.
No problem. Any questions in regards to that?
So I know the collection rate was high as far as taxes,
Mhm.
recently. Do we, there's probably no way to predict what that's gonna look like in the future.
Well, this right here, my next document's gonna lead right to the taxes, so I can, but in regards to that, that document in itself, that's just kind of giving you an overview of where we're gonna end at in June 30th of this year.
Gotcha.
Now, the taxes, I can answer that question specifically, and that's the next thing on the agenda, so I'll kind of give you a 5-year comparison.
Gabe, is that one of these numbers, our reserve?
Yeah, that's what that unrestricted balance is, the 32,604,370.30.
Okay, that's actually what we would consider being in our reserve.
Yes.
Okay. It's drawing interest, right? But you got it in Bitcoin?
It's an ether.
Just part of it in Bitcoin, don't put all of it in there.
I'm more into energy. So the next document that I have provided is a 5-year current tax collection revenue. Dr. Green had a good question at the last board meeting, and this is going to explain exactly where we're at. But if you notice, within the 5 years, we had a decrease from 17 to 18, and we had an increase, a small increase from 18 to 19, a pretty good substantial increase from 19 to 20. Also a decent increase from 20 to 21, and then also from 20 to 22, 21 to 22. Now, one thing that I want to make note of, at the board meeting, the January financials were reported that our revenues were about $7 million, or our tax revenue was about $7 million greater than the previous year. Notice in February, it's a lot closer than $7 million, and we knew that that was probably going to be the case. The biggest reason was in January of 2021, the county office had some COVID issues, and so the taxes did not come through until February. So we anticipate that this is going to grow a little bit in March, probably a little bit greater than it did the previous year, so it's going to be more, but it's not going to be $7 million more. And that's why presented that information on the 28th at the meeting, and I said, I was hesitant to say, you know, this is real. I knew that it probably was gonna be an increase, but, so that kind of, it brings things back to perspective.
Just a timing issue.
It was a timing issue, and it just had to do with their office was closed for COVID. So it was not processed at that time. And we knew that was probably gonna be the case.
If I can jump back a second
Yeah.
to your fund balance.
Uh-huh.
I mean, wave your magic wand,
Right.
where do you want it to be?
That's where we want it to be, right at 25%. The board, whenever I started the job in July 2018, we had a discussion in September of 2018. The fund balances were 15.99, and that's where they wanted to be, was right at 25. So we're in a good place.
Excellent.
Now, with that being said, right now we are, on the state revenue side, we are operating from 1920, the enrollment from 1920. And as you know, enrollment hasn't been very good the last couple of years. And so when we get on the formula from the state side, which is about 40% of the income that we get, we're gonna see a direct impact or hit. So it is very imperative that we as a district pay attention to what's coming, the gains that we're making on the local side, because the state side is gonna eventually drop off. Now, with that being said, there's legislation, there's talks. A lot of people are gonna be hurt from what COVID, you know, from 2021 and 21-22. And so will they ever put us on that? Will they let us skip that? I don't know. But we are 400 or 500 kids less than we were in 1920. So 400 or 500 kids equates to $7,000 per kid. You know, it's $2.8 million that you would lose on the other side. So,
Back to your 25% in the levy.
yeah, 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 it all makes sense.
Smart.
Any other questions? All right, if not, I would entertain the option to.
I actually got one.
Yes.
I was pleased with the article in the paper.
You're covering
I wanted about, I didn't realize that you were gonna do the $1,000 signing
Uh-huh.
retention. I was really pleased with the 90% of the teachers signed that and received that.
Yes, that was awesome. And one thing I will make note too, that goes along with that, is we're working with our school attorney right now to come up with a way to also give that to the non-certified staff and in next year's paychecks, and so that'll be coming soon. Dr. Kraus had mentioned it today at our directors meeting, so we are in hopes that we'll be able to give them $1,000 as well.
I was thrilled with that response. Early on, you know, there was kind of some outrage and chatter. I'm sure you saw that. I assume you're in touch with that. But to think that 90% of the folks took advantage of that and received that is great. It's good.
Does that get paid?
It gets paid in 22-23. Yep.
you
So
gotta-
it'll keep 'em.
You gotta come back.
So it's a retention, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it was a plan for retention on our part, and it worked.
Well, and it's a salary. No matter how you count it, it's still income earned in
Sure.
that period, so
Sure.
it's good.
Yep.
They should get incentive to stick with us.
Was that straight out of our budget, or did we get some of that money through the COVID?
That was part of the grant that Dr. Kraus had applied for. I think it was like 500,000, a little over $500,000 total, and it was like 119,000 in the first year, and 100. I mean, we're gonna exceed that, but that's okay. I mean, it's
That's
money.
good. I just wanted to.
So it was a grant, the initial 500 grand was a grant?
Yeah,
We-
uh-huh.
We didn't have to match it or nothing? Okay.
All right, if I could get a motion to adjourn? Okay, second? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thanks, guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you.